I am a terrible content creator. We had a giant update, we had a test server, we had all kinds of wonderful things. And I even did the hard part of recording with my good buddy Big Skillet to talk about those changes. And I just got busy and haven't had a chance to actually edit the video. So I'm now recording this almost a week later. Hopefully you guys will stick with me long enough to see some of the thoughts and reactions from the test server that was open last weekend. Now, this is going to be a debrief, and Skillet and I kind of went back and forth on a couple of different items. He made a video that I will link in the video here in just a second, as well as in the description below. And then obviously, I had my own thoughts that we were able to kind of talk through. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive in. But if you guys left comments on the last video, be sure to stick around until the end because I will be announcing the 2 winners of the Omega Combo giveaway. So with that, let's go ahead, undock, and dive into it. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Killmark Collectors, and today we are going to be talking with Big Skillet, old friend of the show, and good to have you on again, man. Really looking forward to talking about the balance patch and really some of the test server stuff that we and you have been kind of playing around with over the last couple of days. So thanks again for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you having me on your channel, and I'm looking forward to this because there's a lot to unpack. So.
There really is. There really is. And you've actually already put out a video about some of these changes. Specifically, I think you were talking about some of the drone changes and the, I guess, the shield bubble changes. And so maybe we start with that because I think, honestly, that's probably one of the biggest patches or biggest things that are changing in this patch, I should say. So let's just, I know you've got a video. I'll link it up here as well, but let's just kind of high level. What was your thought on the speed nerf and kind of the resistance nerf, all that stuff that went into the bubble meta, end of the bubble meta, I guess I should say.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack on that. The first thing I will say is I'm happy with the resistance nerf to the nightmare and well, I should say to the shield field module. What I am concerned about is the speed reduction.
Yeah.
That's the main concern I have is the speed reduction. I think it's too much. I think they need to throttle that back a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like it is a little heavy-handed. I think I'd like to see maybe a 10 to 15% reduction. I think that would still at least give it a little bit of skill in being able to maybe still kite around, or if you just want to put 3 aux 3s on your nightmare, maybe you can do it right. But it does feel a little heavy-handed on that speed reduction.
I think you're going to see more of structure protection, maybe just at the undock and things like that, because they're not going to be very nimble. They've taken that agility away from them. And I think it's going to change how people use that. And I think it's going to bring the fight closer together. I think it's going to eventually force brawl fighting again, which I'm fine with. I like that. I like that meta way better. But I also think we're going to see a major shift towards the armor links.
Well, and I was about to bring that up because the armor link does not have a speed reduction, right? And so I think that it's actually, for the first time, almost going to be more desirable to have armor because you don't have the speed reduction, but you still also then get the benefit of having that distributed damage. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be fun to see. It's going to bring out some different ships, and along with the buff to railguns, I think we're in for a treat. I think that we're in for a really exciting, 2 to 3 months as people are trying to figure this stuff out. People are losing fleets. People are, doing after action debriefs. I'm really excited. I think that's going to be a really fun way to look at the game evolving as some of this stuff takes place.
I am very excited about that too. I think it's going to, for the last 9 months or so, we've basically had one way to fight. It's the speed and drone meta. And that gets really stale really quickly, especially after 9 months. So, for a game of this magnitude and all the ships we have to play with, that we're basically limited to one, fighting style because of how powerful the shield field module was.
Yeah. So looking into your crystal ball here, if you were to guess what ship do you think is going to start kind of being the next big battleship that people are flying in these CTAs and stuff? What's your guess? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah,
so
I didn't think
it's my
about
channel. I can do whatever I want.
Well, I think you're going to see a massive switch to armor. I just do, and I can't. Unfortunately, my mind escapes myself of which ship, but the ships that are prone to the armor links. I think you're going to see armor link is going to be center stage, and I think that those pilots that have already spec'd into that and are ready for it, I think they're ready to go. I think you're going to see group armor reps with. Yeah. It's going to be a tank. Is what you're going to do. You're going to see those fleets are going to be extraordinarily tanky. They're going to deal less DPS because of it, but the survivability is going to be really, really, really good.
See, I don't know if I agree with they're going to do less DPS, because I think that you're going to see two types of fleets. I think you're going to see the APOC striker fleets. I think you're going to see APOC strikers that are trying to engage at the 30 to 40 kilometer range, and they're going to be kiting and they're going to be using armor links to distribute that. And they're going to basically rely on the fact that if you are on a shield field, you're not going to be able to get in close and brawl and do all that other stuff. And then the other type of fleet that I think is really going to be interesting is, especially with the buff to railguns, I think that you're going to see a lot of Megathron strikers and Hyperions. And that's going to be fun to see, I think, because with those, especially with the Hyperion, you have the boost to armor reps. And so if you're looking at that with the way the armor link works and it's distributing damage, and you have 10 Hyperions all using group reps and group cap, I think that you could end up with a really, really tanky fleet that really is not sacrificing that much DPS, because if you're still putting snub-nosed rails on, those things put out just massive amounts of damage.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a different fleet composition, like you said. You're going to see you're still going to see the speed ships, and I think the armor ships you're going to see those ships are going to be your more agile ships, and then you're still going to have your sniper ships off to the side trying to pluck any ships that fall outside the shield bubble. That's kind of where I see those two groups will go hand in hand together, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. I think you're going to end up with some really fun battles and some fun fleet comps. So I'm excited. Well, let's keep moving here, because we've already been talking for almost 10 minutes. So, I mean, what's your thought on, obviously, the drones and some of that? I don't want to spend too much time, because you covered it really well and did a great analysis of how many pulses it takes and all that to kill large drones and all of that. So, I mean, just in 30 seconds, what's kind of your prediction with the meta and how, drones are going to kind of be phased out or not?
I think they're going to be phased out. I think you're going to see people using drones only for defense, to maybe attack other drones, or possibly just, if they're getting swarmed by, 5 or 6 interceptors, for example, something like that, a fast tackle, they might use them to defend themselves. But I don't think we're going to see them from an offensive perspective anymore. They're too expensive. They're going to pop really easy. And, unless it's a large drone, then you have a fighting chance, but they're a lot slower. I just think you're going to see that version of the meta is going to go away pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Well, and I think I said this in the previous video that I did, but I think it was kind of a lazy way for the devs to fix some of the server stability issues that they had with drones. I don't know if that was fully the intention, or if they really were looking for a way to provide a counter, but either way, I think they overdid it a little bit. That being said, all the other changes, and a lot of the other changes, I should say, I'm actually really a fan of. And one of the biggest, I mean, we mentioned interceptors just a second ago. They got a pretty big nerf, it feels like. And I don't know if you played around, because I don't think you're much of a frigate pilot, right?
Not typically. And that's why I was kind of reaching out in my video to say, hey, give me your feedback because I really don't know. So I know
Yeah.
you like to fly the Scepters and the assault frig, so I'm curious to see what you have to say.
Yeah, so I do love a good frigate. I'm more of a cruiser guy these days, but I do love frigates. I think that the changes to scepters were interesting. I'm not sure if I'm willing to say that they were good or they were enough. Um, and specifically, I'm thinking because I was looking at my Atron 2 and the Atron 2 that I have on the live server now without a core gets 513 DPS. With the one that I had on the test server, I was at like 449 or something like that. And so while at first you're like, oh, you basically lost, what is that, 80 DPS or 70 DPS, whatever it is. When you then add back a core, you basically get all of that back. So it ends up only being about 500 to 510 or something like that, and you only lost about 40 DPS, something like that. So it's interesting to me, and the way that they implemented it. I feel like especially with the Interceptor 2s, there were a lot that did not really get that much of a buff. I think it was like a 3% per level damage decrease. And for all of the bluster about we want them to not be assault frigates and we want assault frigates to chew interceptors up or whatever, there's still no T10 assault frig, like,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of hard to be like, I'm happy with the interceptor nerf. They did get a pretty big drop in speed, I will say that, but that was kind of across the board, and that was something that you saw with the Nightmare, just as a result of the skills and everything. So, I mean, I think that's good. I don't think it's going to take interceptors completely away, which a lot of people are probably going to be happy about, but I don't know. I wish that we had gotten a little bit more damage taken off of the interceptors and either a variant of the assault frigs or just an even better buff or something like that to the T7s if we really had to while we're waiting for a full T10. But I don't know. I love the idea. I wish that they'd taken it a little bit further.
Yeah. So it's another one of those things where the expectations were high, right? To bring those ships back in line to where they should be. They are. I mean, the name tells you they're an interceptor, right? They're there to tackle ships, hold them down as best they can for the more DPS ships to arrive and finish them off. And it doesn't seem like, based on the numbers, that they've decreased them enough to bring in assault ships more in the mix, right?
But I will say that I feel like they did a really good job with making the Explorer frigates actually pretty worthwhile. I don't know if you saw those at all. They actually added not only the third mid slot, which still blows my mind that wasn't there in the first place.
Oh my gosh.
But they actually also added a 25% or increased chance of success for those ships to unlock the crates, which I thought was great because even with the other bonuses that they got, in my mind, having an interceptor with a couple of scanning rigs on it was better than a Covops, basically frigate, to go do exploring. But now that we have that buff to the success, I really feel like if I'm going to go do exploring, I want to be an explorer if I'm going to do, exploration. If I'm going to do exploration, I want to be an explorer rather than an interceptor now.
Yeah, and they need to take that into account when they're making changes and nerfs and buffs and whatnot, that they need to look at a ship's potential counterpart, even though it's not naturally. Like an interceptor is not, you wouldn't think would be a natural fit for exploration. But when you start adding the rigs, like you said, and it was better than the ships that we were using with some rigs, but had the bonuses, like this is what you need. No other ship should be able to outperform the ship that's designed to do the function that it's for. So yeah. I'm glad to see it. The extra mid slot, I mean, that's something they should have did after the first week or the first couple days or the next downtime or whatever. So that, that's a whole beatdown in and of itself. But I'm glad they gave them the love that they deserve. And now it's a ship that I think most people are going to fly, just like you said.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's definitely a great addition to the game to bring those ships kind of back. I think you're going to start seeing those more. It's going to add a little bit more flair to exploration, because you can't just autopilot through and just hit the button. If you do hit a gate camp, you've got to at least be somewhat paying attention. So I definitely think it's a good change and a good benefit and cost trade-off. Let's kind of talk about the last thing that we really wanted to hit today. I think the other big change is the extenders, and this is probably the biggest change from a small gang or a solo PvP. No longer can you cycle extenders. You're now going to have to basically wait about 3 minutes to hit a battery, a shield extender, an armor plate, something like that for a second time. What's your thought on if that's a good change, bad change, BS change? I'm not talking battleship,
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because I 100% understand their point, right? Those modules are designed to be like a no ship button. It's an emergency situation. You're starting to go down. You pop one. If you happen to have two, you wait and pop the second one to buy enough time to either defeat the enemy or help arrives, right? Mm-hmm. It's not designed to be a regular, continuous part of your repairing feature or health feature. So I get it from that perspective. The problem is I think it's okay. They could have nerfed them a little bit, but I think they overcorrected here. EVE Online, the Abaddon and EVE Online's been doing this for years. It's just a viable tactic to use the extenders versus the booster. Now, does that mean the boosters are not, they're not appropriately metered for their purpose? Possibly, but I think they could have tailored. I think they could have made the reactivation delay not so long. 3 minutes is absurd. It's a DCU now basically, and it changes the way people play certain ships now. And I didn't think it was that big of a deal, right? Per se.
Well, and I was gonna say, I mean, the thing that gets me is that the DCU is 150 seconds, and don't get me wrong, I mean that's a lot of time, but for what you got, you basically get 12 seconds or 15 seconds of invulnerability.
Yeah,
but now if you're using the extender, and granted you do get some additional passive benefits, and it is worthwhile, especially if you're talking about like on a capital, being able to have that passive buff is can be really impactful, but if I'm looking at like a frigate, right, or a cruiser even, I'm probably not going to be putting an extender on that. I'm probably going to be putting a booster, because even if I get my short-term pop, the amount of health that I get for that basically 3.5 minutes that it could be active,
right?
I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think the 3 minutes is a little absurd.
Yeah, they've made it to the point where
it is hard.
Virtually nobody's going to use them, because the passive bonuses are good, but if you can rep yourself, if you can keep, the longer you stay alive, the better the booster is, right?
Yeah, agreed. Well, and I think that you're going to see a lot more NOSes on smaller ships as well now, because again, if you're trying to just stay alive for as long as possible, your biggest issue is going to be the cap, and so you're going to see people pulling more cap off of other ships. So I mean, it's going to be interesting, but I think that it's trying to solve a problem I don't know if I agree was there, but it is what it is at this point. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I don't really understand why they made this change. I don't believe people were complaining about extenders or plates, to be honest. Yeah, we did see that one video of the Abaddon tanking like 15 ships for ever and a day and just, methodically plucking them out of the sky. But, I just don't understand why they decided to do it this way. They
Yeah.
could have scaled it back, but made it more feasible to still use that method if you really wanted to. But now they made it to where you just can't do it. It's just not feasible.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing that's going to be really interesting is that if I'm not mistaken, I believe that this applies to batteries as well. And
Correct, yeah.
that is a huge part of capital warfare. So like if you're using a dreadnought, your ability to pop those cap batteries and get those heals is, I mean, it is literally the deciding factor in a lot of cases. So I'm going to be very interested to see how this all impacts the cap meta. Obviously, we haven't seen a ton of that yet. I think there's going to be a big battle coming up on Wednesday.
Oh,
Wink,
hey.
nod, nod. I mean, I'm just saying. I think there's going to be a lot of talk, and there's been a lot of stuff going back and forth about some of that. And so we may kind of get to finally see some of these capitals in large warfare scenarios. But I mean, it's that is when you've seen these videos of like the dreadnought that Damon Zell featured on his channel a little bit ago of, I think it tanks something like 64 million damage or something like that. I mean, it was just absurd.
Yeah.
But it was all because it was able to pop those cap batteries and cycle through and all of that. And so with this change, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that changes and how some of these caps now are able to be taken down.
Well, I think it's a big negative change. It's a bad change because if you remember the way they did the capital shield boosters and the cap on, like for the Nidhogger, for example.
Mm-hmm.
When I finally got to 554 in capital engineering, and based on the rigs I had and based on fulmination, I was going to be cap stable with just one battery, right? But after they made that change, it cut my cap in half because I think the cap was like 48 minutes or something. And it was like 34 minutes, and it cut it down to 16 minutes by that change they made. And how I've been surviving or had planned on surviving if I was jumped, would have been having at least 2 cap batteries in the lows. That way I could cycle out, either 2 reps or, whatever. But it's a big part of at least the shield, capital ships for sure, based on how they made that off the cuff change. I think it's going to have a major negative impact on those ships specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to kind of see how it goes, but I agree with you. I think it's a little heavy-handed. I feel like I said that several times already. I think that's kind of the theme of this patch.
Well, you're right, though. That's the thing. It's you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard because I know they're in an impossible spot with having to balance a lot of this stuff, but again, this is kind of where I wish that they had done the incremental patches instead of one big bang once a year, because if I'm also being honest, I'm a little underwhelmed by how many balance changes are in here. We don't have anything for destroyers except for the interdictors. We don't have anything for cruisers other than saying the Blackbird is now getting scan res or whatever it is, or the flight velocity, which even doesn't still fix that ship. I was running the numbers. I'd still rather be flying a Bellicose than a Blackbird. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I feel like overall, I like the changes that they're making. I just wish they had made more of them.
Well, this is what happens when you take a game that you have all the data for 18 years and you decide to change it up. It makes these kind of things, these huge balance updates or even quarterly updates or whatever, so much harder because you don't have any other data to rely on. That EVE Online, the ships are fairly well balanced, and it boils down to your play style or what type of ship you like. Do you like missiles better than railguns or better than lasers? It's really just, they're all kind of, each class is kind of equal to each other, and it's really just preference. And we don't have that in this game. There's so many stark, dramatic changes from one to the other that it leaves you with one choice.
Yeah. Well, and that's something we could probably talk about for a lot longer, but I know that we are almost at half an hour here, and so I don't want to keep going too much more here. But
Lots of editing for you.
I know, right? Exactly. But I mean, honestly, this was a great conversation, and I think that there's a lot of great takeaways from this patch, and I really am excited. And I feel like I've been down the last couple of minutes on some of these changes, but I do feel like overall this is a very good change for the game. I think it's going to introduce a lot of variability and a lot more replayability for people. So I'm excited. I really am. And I don't know what your thoughts are kind of overall. I'll let you kind of have the last word here. But that's kind of my thought, is that this is overall very good change. I hope that we are able to see more of these types of updates a little bit more frequently, but I am excited about this, and I'm looking forward to jumping back into these ships and figuring out how to make these work.
I agree with you. I think overall, I give them a B+, A- for this update, because there are a lot of enhancements, and even some of the changes I don't necessarily agree with. I do like that it's going to force us out of our shell, our comfort zone, basically, and try some other things. Like the armor links, for example. The armor linking, I think, is going to be something that people are going to be excited to try and see how well it does, and just do something different. I think we're all tired of playing the game the same way. And I think with a lot of these changes, it's going to give us some freedom to make some new choices. And new choices are good.
I completely agree. So, well, Skillet, thank you so much for joining. I really do appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. If you guys have not already, be sure to head over to his channel. I will link it here in one of the cards or videos or whatever it is. He did a great breakdown, as I mentioned, very quick. I think it's only like 3 or 4 minutes on the shield fields and some of the drones and stuff like that. So if you want to see more information there, be sure. And of course, for those of you that are sticking around to see who won the Omega combo, we're going to jump into that in just a second here. But thanks again, Big Skillet. Really appreciate you joining. Can't wait to have you on again soon.
Thanks, Skippy. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
No worries. Talk to you soon, man. Have a good one.
You too.
Well, that's it for today. And again, thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you, Big Skillet, for coming on and just hanging out and shooting the breeze with me. That was a lot of fun. Now, in terms of the Omega Combo giveaway, there are 2 giveaways that I was going to be doing. The first was for a random winner. That is going to be Christian Tiberg, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. For the second Omega Combo, the way that I wanted to give this one away was by the person that I thought had a really interesting perspective or point of view that I hadn't considered, and that is going to be Eric S. Eric mentioned that he said that a lot of the garbage rigs are removed and the loot tables have been revamped so that hopefully we're able to get some more of the quote-unquote good rigs when we start doing some of these sites. And that was, I think, something that I missed and that I'm actually really looking forward to, because again, I think it's going to make everybody a little bit more equitable, and hopefully it's going to make it so that you do a big Inquisitor and some of them you get 500 mil out and some of them you get 15 mil. Either way, I think it was a great point, and I really do appreciate Eric leaving comments, along with everybody else that did on that video. For the winners, for Eric and Christian, please go ahead and comment on this video down below. Make sure that you are putting your in-game name and your character number, that's the 11-digit number, so that I can get that over to the devs and get you guys that Omega combo. As always, please give it about 2 to 3 weeks. The devs are a little bit slow when it comes to giving those out. But either way, congratulations to the winners, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these in the future. But until next time, thanks for joining, fly safe, and remember, kill marks last forever. Have a good one, y'all.